And so the recording started. If anybody isn't comfortable to be on screen, then please just turn your camera off. That's no problem. And I'm going to share my screen and get started. So hopefully you can all see my screen okay. This is the main CAN website. Within the website, there is the member zone, which you can access by clicking on the member zone link. That will then take you to the login page. Sorry, my Zoom bar's right across the top of my screen, which isn't helpful for my tabs. Okay, so this is the entry to the membership zone. Then you can click into log into your membership zone. Membership is free to join CAN, and then you can access the member zone, and there's a whole wealth of information in there. So if you're not already a member, then please do get in touch with our membership coordinator, and they'll be able to set you up with a free membership for your organization and a link to the website where you can find all this information. So the toolkit can be found in the Empower section under the Raising Money Fundraising Toolkit tab there. So this will then take you to this page. You just click onto the link here, which will open the toolkit for you. So the toolkit has been compiled and designed to complement the training and advice services that CAN provides. So we have a series of fundraising webinars that run throughout the year on a rolling programme. And we can also provide one-to-one advice for CAN members as well. And that's organised through myself and my colleague Becky. So the toolkit is designed to support your general fundraising efforts, and it's designed to provide some useful guidance as well as links to best practice and different legislation so that you can get all the information you need. And it also links to the Code of Fundraising Practice so that it can help you inform your fundraising in an ethical way. So these are the main sections of the toolkit. It is an evolving thing. So this has just been compiled as the initial needs. There's another section that is due to be on there actually, which is online donations, which is just being updated, but it'll be on the next couple of days. But as you're using the toolkit, if you do come across any suggestions for more information that you'd like to see on there or different sections that could be added, then please do get in touch with us and let us know. Because we'd like it to be a very useful, growing resource that's helpful to people. So I'll start off with the grants section. This is probably the most meaty section in the toolkit. And it tends to be the main source of funding for different charitable organisations. So there's some overview information there and just a few statistics. And then it'll take you to different links that are helpful to you. So within the BCP and Dorset area, there's a grant search engine called Open for Community, or iDocs, which is funded in the BCP area by BCP Council and in the Dorset Council area by Dorset Council. So these two links will take you to that resource. It's a very, very useful funding directory. You can sign up for free to that as long as the turnover of your organisation is under £1 million. And it's a very useful, comprehensive resource that is very well up to date, and it contains huge amounts of information on all different kinds of funders. So we have a session coming up on this website next month to show you how this website actually works, how to search for funding, how to narrow down your options. So I won't go too much into that at this stage, but just to let you know that if you're in the BCP area, then it's the top link, Dorset Council area, the bottom link. There's a link to Active Dorset funding as well. That used to be quite a comprehensive database of sport-related funding, but it's quite a limited amount of information on there now. But it is one that's updated, so it is worth you, if that's your area of work, to keep a look on that. So the three main sections of grant funding. central government and local authority, national lottery, and charitable trusts and foundations. So these links will take you to local information. Sorry, my internet's a little bit slow this morning. So it's just a bit of an overview about central government and local authority funding. Unfortunately, this source of funding is dwindling and continues to across the country. But there are often sources of local funds, and these links will take you to them. So Bournemouth area runs the Coastal Lottery, so this link will take you to the information about that. BCP Council does offer community grants from time to time, so that link will take you to any current grants that they have available. There's a link similarly to Dorset Council. They have different funding pots through the year, things like a culture and community fund. And then there's a link to the central government grant service. So you can navigate through the pages of the toolkit either by going back to the main page or otherwise through the links on the left-hand side. So I'll take you back to the previous set page just so that it's clear where we are. So National Lottery is obviously a main funder across the country for a huge range of projects. And as it says there, and I've just seen on the news this morning, because you've probably seen the lotteries just being handed over to a new contractor, but they've given out over 48 billion, it said on the news this morning now, in good causes since it started in '94. So the main sources of lottery fund distribution are the Community Fund, Sport England, National Lottery Heritage Fund, Arts Council, and the British Film Institute. So these links will take you to all of those funds and give you the overview of what funding programmes they have available. There's a link at the bottom of the page here for Awards for All, which needs to be updated actually, because Awards for All has just upped their annual limit to £20,000 per year. And that's a very, very useful small grant pot for small and often new organisations. And it's one that you can often repeatedly apply to. So that one's highlighted there because it is a particularly helpful fund for local organisations. So charitable and corporate trusts and foundations. This link will take you to a bit of an overview of those sources of funding. Again, there's the links to the Open for Community websites there. It also highlights here Dorset Community Foundation. I'm sure many of you are aware of them, but they offer grants within the Dorset area, and they're a very important local funder, and they do have a wide range of different programmes. This link will take you to their website where you can find out more detail about those and the different deadlines that are operating. Dorset Community Foundation also has a database of Dorset-based funders. They tend to be small family charitable trusts, and they're not generally big grant pots. But if you're working in a small organisation where a couple of £100 can make a difference to the piece of work you want to do, and it's Dorset focused, then that can be a useful source of information for you. Okay, so I'll take you back. So that's the main areas within the grant section. I'll take you back to the main toolkit now. So on to individual donations. So there's quite a lot of information within this section because individual donations is tending to be the largest sources of funding for charitable organisations across the country. And and there's obviously lots of different aspects to it. So there's the individual giving section here. So this gives a bit of guidance and a few statistics about the amount of donations that people give, trends for how they're giving their donations as well, which might be useful for your organisation to know, and to help with your fundraising planning. So there's some just general guidance there. There's a link here to the Code of Fundraising Practice. And as I mentioned, this is something that we recommend all organisations do read and do follow, because it's an ethical guide of how to conduct your fundraising to ensure that you're working in a positive way, representing your charity out in the community. There's also a Trust and Fundraising Handbook and practical guides there, face-to-face fundraising guides that you may find helpful. And also there's a link to information about accepting, refusing and returning donations, because again, getting back to ethical practice, there may be situations where you're offered a donation or sponsorship which you're not comfortable to accept, and it doesn't fit with the operations of your charity and your charitable objectives. So there's some guidance there. So within, there's regular giving is also an important source of funding. So there's some guidance here about payroll fundraising, whether you can set something like that up for your supporters through direct debits or standing orders. And there's guidance there to the different legislation around that and practice for how you do it and rules with HMRC, that kind of thing. So that's kind of, the practical information you need to be able to set up those kind of schemes. Major donations and stewarding, there's some guidance on there, how to develop your strategy for that. And there's a link to the Chartered Institute of Fundraising and their guidance on major donor fundraising as well. There's quite a lot of information within these sections, so I won't go through it all in great details. We'll run out of time, but I'll just quickly show you the different sections so that you can spend time going through on your own. Oh yeah, this is the one where the link is being updated, the online donation. So there is some links in there to how you can collect donations online as well, which is obviously a growing way of fundraising, links to mobiles, text giving, that kind of thing. Online shopping cashback can be a very positive way of you raising funds without having to do an awful lot with your fundraising. If you have regular supporters, they can sign up to different websites where they get a donation through their just normal shopping practices, which can be channeled through to your organisation. So there are 2 links there. Easy Fundraising tends to be a very popular one, and they also often do their own extra giving schemes as well alongside the online donations. So leaving a gift and a will is obviously can be a significant source of major donations to different charities. But it tends to be a kind of more long-term stewardship relationship. So there is some guidance here, and again down at the bottom there's some links to legacy fundraising, Chartered Institute of Fundraising about legacies, and some insights and tips to that as well. And then the last section within this area is gift aid. Gift aid can be a very helpful way of your charities gaining more income through their donations, and you can reclaim 25p in every pound that's donated. So this is something that needs to be set up through the government gateway. So if your charity hasn't yet done that, then there's some links here and guidance to how you do that and the rules within that. So that's a very helpful thing to set up if you haven't already. Okay, so going back to the main page. So community fundraising is obviously an important source of fundraising, but also an important way of engaging your supporters and if you have members as well. So there can be a whole wide range of ways to raise money through the community. And there's some guidance here, again, to the Code of Fundraising Practice, but there is certain legislation around community fundraising as well, particularly things like auctions, lotteries and raffles. So I've included some links there which will take you to the appropriate guidance. Often you have to register a lottery or a raffle or an event with your local authority or different organisations. So it's very important to look into that. And there's particular rules around lotteries and raffles in terms of the Gambling Commission as well. So that's something to look into thoroughly before you go ahead and set that up. And yeah, that's something just a little, obviously COVID was thankfully in the past now, but I thought it was helpful to include a couple of case studies there about different people engaging remotely with their supporters. Okay, so on to crowdfunding. We have a Meet the Funder session coming up in February with Crowdfunder, which is one of the main crowdfunding platforms. And crowdfunding can be a really, really helpful way for you to raise funds over an intensive period of time, and they can be very successful, particularly if you have very good social media engagement and you have some support with that to kind of generate traffic to your crowdfunding site and through your website. So there's some guidance here about that, and 95 tips for crowdfunders from crowdfunding there. And there's obviously different crowdfunding platforms out there, but Crowdfunder is a particularly good one, and it's one I've used personally for a number of campaigns in the past. So if that's something you want to look into, I would recommend you come to the session in February. It's one of their project managers. Crowdfunder is actually based in Dorset, in Bridport, and they're a very knowledgeable organisation and very supportive when you're setting up your crowdfunding appeal as well. Okay, so on to contracts. There's some basic information here about contracts for charitable organisations. There's a link to some best practice guidance, the beginner's guide to commissioning. It can be a bit of a minefield, commissioning, and a bit of a daunting task for organisations that are new to that kind of funding model. But there's a beginner's guide there. There are links here to public sector bodies that commission contracts as well, locally as well as nationally. And there's a Southwest portal as well for different contracts and tenders that might be appropriate for your work for delivering community benefits. Sorry, my internet is very slow today. Excuse the pauses in between page changes. So moving on to trading, many of you will be working for charities, I'm sure. There are certain legal requirements for charities in terms of trading and restrictions as well. So it's important that you're aware of those and that they're informing your fundraising, but also trading can be an important source of income for a charity. So there's some guidance on here and some key questions to ask about the work that you're doing and whether it fits that model. So as I said earlier, the toolkit is designed to complement our different training and advice sessions. So what we always recommend with organisations funding is that you endeavour to get a broad range of diverse income sources to support your organisation. So things like grants, donations, community fundraising, and if you've got the potential to trade and contracts as well, if you can gain income through different sources, it gives you a much stronger chance of creating a more sustainable organisation for the long term. So corporate support. Corporate sponsorship can be a useful source of funding for your organisation. It tends to be a relatively low amount of money that's given to charities, particularly on a local basis. I think national companies definitely will do some high profile sponsorship, but it tends to be harder to secure significant donations on a local basis. But it can be a useful source of support and funding. Alongside support, it can be a useful way of developing a relationship with a company where their employees might get involved. They might be able to give some practical support to your organisation. And there are examples of relationships where a company might be able to support the marketing of a local charitable organisation and provide some expertise there that the charity doesn't have. So those kind of relationships can work well, as well as getting employees involved in fundraising activities, volunteering, that kind of thing. If you've got practical things people can get involved with, that's always seen as very helpful. You know, if you've got some kind of work that needs to be done on a building or a garden, that kind of thing, it can be a good way to get a company involved with your charity. And then the relationship can grow from there. And often local companies do like to support a charity of the year, that kind of arrangement. So it's worth doing your research into different companies, seeing what giving they do, what the ambitions are of the company, what kind of work they want to support, how they want to promote themselves in that is quite key as well. And there may be options for you to develop that for a longer term. So on to building a case for support. This is one of the sessions we run as part of the fundraising webinars. And it's a key part of developing funding bids for particularly grants, but also can be for contracts and tenders as well. So this is a bit of an overview of helpful information to include in your case for support. Things like communicating what you do, how you do it, who your beneficiaries are, how you engage your beneficiaries, and there's some links to best practice and guidance there as well. So this goes through all the main sections. And there are some links here to things like theory of changes, planning triangles, planning out your work, that kind of thing. So onto evidence and data. This is a key part of fundraising practice. And again, this is one of the areas that we do concentrate on in some of the fundraising webinars. So establishing a strong evidence base for your work is very, very important, securing funding. So there's a whole range of data and statistics out there that you can use to support your funding, to demonstrate why your charity is doing what you're doing, what difference you make, and what the needs are of the people that you're trying to support. So key to that is the National Indices of Multiple Deprivation. This is a database I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with, but you can look at statistics for your local area. You can put in the postcode and it will tell you where your ranking is across the whole country in terms of the deprivation statistics. So it includes things like population, income, employment, education, skills and training, along with health, crime and barriers to housing, income deprivation affecting children and older people. So they can be really key statistics that you can pull out that you can use to support your funding bids. So there's links here on this page. The local authorities for Dorset and BCP areas analyse the national data as well, and they develop local neighbourhood profiles which pull out the statistics. So areas like Boscombe and Poole, there will be whole reports on that key data that is within the indices of multiple deprivation related to the area and the local issues. So there are some links here to those statistics, and again they can be very useful sources of information for you. Alongside that, if your work is linked to things like crime or local priorities, local community safety, that kind of thing, the police publish a lot of data that you can access. And NHS publish a lot of data about different health conditions, local needs, local health priorities, and if there's gaps in provision, that kind of thing. So their data sets can be quite heavy, but there's a lot of very, very useful information within there that you can pull out if it's related to your work and community health. And again, local health is similar. So I would encourage you to spend some time, if you don't have an evidence base for your organisation, to look into those areas. So this is the last section we're going to look at, and that focuses on monitoring, evaluation and impact. This is a key area for all of fundraising, really, particularly grant funding, contracts and tenders, because funders will want to see how you're spending your money and that you've evaluated it, you're monitoring it, and that you're able to demonstrate the impact from your work. So there's some outline guidance here on that. And as well as things like outputs, outcomes, indicators, measuring your impact is a very key area for the charitable sector. And we have a workshop session in person coming up in March, which is going to be led by Kirsty, who's the local officer of the National Lottery Community Fund. So she's going to be talking through impact evaluation from a lottery perspective, and talking people through the kind of information that they need to see as a funder and that can help inform your fundraising bids. And also there's going to be a local organisation that's received lottery funding that has some really good practice in place. So they're going to be sharing how they monitor and evaluate their work, how they report on their outcomes and outputs to the lottery. And because this is often an area that people find quite difficult to communicate the impact that they're having in the community and the benefits they're providing, even though they're doing a huge amount of fantastic work in the community. So this section, and also that workshop session, if you're able to join, can provide some useful guidance for that. So there's some helpful links within this section to developing a monitoring and evaluation framework, strategy, and all of those kind of helpful guides that will hopefully inform your work. So that's all of the key sections within the fundraising toolkit there. So it's all written in plain English and hopefully is quite accessible to get all the information. As I said, when you come across it and if you start to use it, if you come across anything that you think would be really helpful to include, then please do let us know, because we want this to continue to grow and be helpful. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And sorry, that was a lot of talking at you then, and I hope everybody hasn't gone to sleep, but so we've got some time now if you wanted to answer any questions. Did anyone have any questions they wanted to ask?
If you don't want to ask them out loud, you can pop them in the chat. I've got the chat open. I've got a hand up actually, I think.
Hi, it's Michelle here.
Hello.
Just a quick one. I'm sorry I joined late because somebody came to the door. So you've mentioned there's quite a few training sessions coming up that I'd be really interested in. So will we be communicated in the same way that about this that we were for this one?
If you visit on the CAN website, let me just share my screen again, and I'll show you where you can find that information. Right, if you go onto the main CAN page. Oh, it's not going to let me go back now. Just leaving me in the member zone. Won't be a second. Right, so on the CAN page, there's a tab here that's training and events. So you can click on all events. So there's drop-in sessions, networks. Most of it's in CAN training and free webinars. So this is the one today, right at the top. Meet the Funder is 6th of February, and they're all listed within this section. So they're updated as soon as we've made the dates and the planning for it. So yeah, please do have a look on there, and all of the information is on there, and the booking link as well.
Perfect, thank you.
And then Kellen had a hand up. Apologies if I pronounced that wrong.
No, perfect. Yeah, two things that I wanted to ask and maybe ask everybody. There's one is the online payments. So we want people to be able to donate, obviously online, but there are so many different platforms out there in terms of you know, you can have PayPal and then it says it's all free, but then you have to sign up with a bank account and then there's costs for that. And, you know, I had a meeting with a company called Enthuse, who they look amazing. But again, there's all these costs, and obviously I'm happy to pay for the service, but I just want to not waste charity money either.
Yeah,
We
sure.
don't have a lot, so you know, I want to get, as we all do, I want to get the best offer for the least amount of money.
Yeah.
So that was my first question.
If I'll answer that one first, that's okay.
Yeah.
There are a whole wide range of platforms.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I think that was me.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, the vast majority of the platforms do make a charge. They do vary though, and some are better than others. The link that I tried to click on, that I said the page is being updated at the moment, I was hoping it was going to be online today, but it's not yet. But that does contain links to information on that. So that's within the individual giving section. But I think really it's just a question of doing research, and there are comparative. There are if you look on the different charity news and their web platforms, they often do comparators of these kind of giving platforms, and they'll compare the charges and they'll look at which is the most efficient ones at the time, because they do change and you get new players coming in. So I would recommend you do some research, but yeah, unfortunately the vast majority do charge for them, which is how they operate. But yeah, it's just something that has to be factored in, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you know, I haven't got a problem with that at all. It's just, you know, trying to, you know, I've looked at all of them, and it's just a bit mind-blowing in terms of the percentages that they charge, and then the extra costs that they put on, and
Yeah,
you know, some charge a monthly amount and then don't charge certain. So it's just, yeah, it's a lot of work.
yeah.
So I didn't know whether anyone could shortcut that for me, but no.
Yeah. There is some links on that page when
Okay,
it's live
looks
on there.
ready.
There is some links and guidance on there. So yeah, hopefully that'll be useful to you. But I mean, again, if you've got any kind of volunteer support with your fundraising, that's the kind of like task that's useful, to be able to give a volunteer or an intern potentially, where they can research those kind of things.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have any at the moment, any volunteers. Most of our volunteers are working with people as opposed to working with systems, and I'm much more comfortable with people than systems. So
Yeah,
unfortunately, a lot of it comes down to me, which is fine.
yeah. If you speak to Amy Collins, who looks after our volunteering, I know she has linked up several volunteers with local organisations to
Okay.
support their fundraising, looking at their research, researching potential funders, that kind of thing. So it might be that that's something she could help you with.
Brilliant. That's a really good idea. Thank you.
If you don't mind us sharing, we've had the exact same scenario. I think, you know, what we find is that all as voluntary organisations, we work in different silos, and we're all doing the same sort of things. So we've gone down this exact same route. I would really encourage you to have a look at Just Giving. So we're using Just Giving at the moment. They give it, you know, 100% of the donation comes to the charity. There is a percentage fee if people give gift aid, but it really depends on the context. We've used PayPal in the past, and actually we found, even though there's a fee connected with PayPal, we found that actually most of our audience are really comfortable with PayPal. They trust PayPal. So we have found that when we've used other platforms that are not as popular or familiar, people don't tend to donate because like they don't trust that portal. So you know, for us, it's been a real mixed bag. We've gone down the PayPal route, we've paid the fees, and then we get people who would give. And then we've used other platforms where people are just not so confident and they don't give. But I would say if you can spend some time and have a look and look at your context in terms of who you're approaching and who you're giving, that'd be really interesting. I don't know if I can see that Chris is online here as well. I don't know if she's got any suggestions or advice on this as well.
Thank you, Dino. That's really helpful.
Dino, did you mean me? Yeah. Oh, well, I've obviously we've all got the same issue and we've debated paying or not. I think it's hard because you don't get the volume of traffic. It's hard to build up. So what I've been exploring is speaking to a couple of universities where there's students looking for placements on the marketing side where they can potentially look at that for us because it's just so time consuming, and even your platform, Louise, that you shared is brilliant, but you know, my time searching through that's just huge. And what happens to us is that we're not consistent. But I am also speaking to another charity who have got some business, they call them business analysts, if you like. So they're all from a corporate background that can offer some free support with funding. So I'm using I'm trying to go a different route, purely because I don't think, even if you pay, I don't think the volume of traffic that we'll get or the time that's invested on social media to drive that traffic is worth it. That's basically what I've sort of concluded. So we try and drive our donations back to our website through like QR codes and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. That's really interesting because I was also I've used Just Giving, I've used crowdfunding, and I think with the Just Giving, because obviously we want to promote our brand as well in terms of, you know, people thinking of us when they think of a dementia charity to actually think of us. But with Just Giving, what you tend to get on their website is a massive Just Giving. So people kind of, they know they're donating to Just Giving, but they don't necessarily see our brand, if that makes sense. So then it's kind of looking at it in a wider sense as well, rather than just that one donation or two donations that are made. It's yeah, our brand being you know, at the forefront of it as well. Thank you. That's really interesting. I'll give that some thought. And yeah, I was just trying to reduce my workload and hope somebody would give me that magic answer. The other question I had was in terms of beneficiaries. So just write an application now, and it asks about beneficiaries, and I guess it's how wide do you go, because we work with families that are living with dementia. So people will typically kind of assume it's the person living with dementia or the care partner that are the beneficiaries, of which they are. But it's much wider than that in terms of the whole family, but also in terms of local authorities delaying people from going into care homes too quickly, GPs, people actually, you know, getting that peer support means they're not knocking on the door of the GPs every 5 minutes in terms of, you know, not being able to cope with the situation. So the beneficiaries are quite vast, and it's, how do you quantify it? You know, because, yeah, I guess it's how do you quantify those beneficiaries when, well, I haven't necessarily got the hard evidence, but I know but it's obviously it's anecdotal as opposed to having those statistics.
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy to communicate those wider beneficiaries, but it's so important. And I think historically the charitable sector is kind of seen as working in isolation. But I think now there's a realization by NHS and other partners of the key work in prevention that local charities do. So I think it's really, really important to try and get that message across. I mean, it is difficult, definitely, but I think is a question of kind of recording the detail that you can, as much as you can, the number of people you're engaging with, their sort of support networks directly, their family members, and then kind of but collecting things like case studies, quotes from people that give that kind of soft data side of it, as well as the hard data to go alongside the quantitative stuff. So it's really not easy to capture. I mean, I think the session with Kirsty coming up, the outcomes and evaluation session, may well be useful to a lot of people, because I think it's such a key thing to capture that wider impact, not just the immediate beneficiaries, but it's not an easy thing to do. So there is some guidance and some links there on the website. But I mean, it varies from organisation to organisation how best to do that. But yeah, I think it's really the mix of capturing the numbers that you can, but also NHS data. You know, there's a lot of information there on the kind of wider implications of work and support and within their strategy documents, and then just kind of capturing that to kind of put a big picture together, really.
Dean, you had a hand up. I think you've still got your original question though.
What your view in terms of what the change of context has been in terms of the different avenues to acquire funding. In our experience, historically, the corporate side of business fundraising was really, really important to us. It was really valuable. That was actually a really kind of essential source of income. The pandemic's now changed that, and we're finding actually we're having to diversify more of our income streams. So out of the ones that you've just listed on the CAN site, in your view, is that molding? How is that changing? Is there one particular area that does better than others? Have you got any views or thoughts, Louise?
There's a link actually on the toolkit to a page that does an annual report looking at fundraising trends over the last year. And there has been, the information that's on the website is based on last year's one, but it needs updating. But basically the main trend is going towards individual giving more and more as the main source of support for charitable organisations. Local authority and government grants are just continuing to decline. Grant funding is increasing year on year, but so are the number of organisations applying and the competition between them. So, but I would say between the two main sources of funding, it's individual ongoing support and grant funding is, they're still the key areas really. But I take the point Chris was making about social media and driving traffic that way, and that it is a very important concern. That comes down to how many resources you have. If you've got any kind of support there or volunteering support, then again, that can be something a volunteer might be able to engage with you on. But and that links in with crowdfunder as well. Crowdfunding appeals can be very resource intensive, linking to social media, but they can be a very useful way of getting significant amounts of funding in a few week period. So it's kind of, you've got to kind of weigh it all up for your organisation, what resources you have available to kind of drive these campaigns.
Louise, can I ask a question? And I'm extremely reluctant to ask this, I have to tell you, but I've been reading a lot about AI lately, and I just wonder if CAN will put any information. I don't think anyone, no robot can ever write a fundraising bid as well as a human can. But obviously we're all strapped for time, and I'm just wondering if CAN will put any information about that within your toolkit.
There isn't a plan to at the moment. It's something that I'm actively looking into actually at the moment, because obviously it's a growing area and I'm looking at some of the different platforms that are emerging there. I mean, me personally, having worked as a fundraiser and for a funder as well, it's really important that your individual bids are tailored. There's some situations where you can repeat the same information to different funders and send that off, but it's very, very apparent quite often when that happens. So I think AI is kind of useful for getting the basic data, you know, the kind of, you know, your mission statement, your contact details, that kind of basic data that is always the same. But then I think the criteria tends to vary an awful lot between different funders, what kind of work they're looking to support, the way you will approach that. So I think so much of it needs to be adapted for different funding bids at the moment. I don't think it's as effective as, you know, as a human being at the moment, thankfully. But I think
Amy Collins did a webinar on AI recently. I could see if there's a video of it and send that out to you, Liz, if that might be useful.
Yeah. It wasn't particularly on funding bids, but it's kind of general. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a growing area and it's an important thing to look at because it does have the potential to save an awful lot of time. But at the moment, I don't think personally it's a substitute because, you know, funders can see when you don't tailor your application, when you're putting in a generic bid. And, you know, so it can give you the edge of whether you get that funding or not, potentially.
Helen has a question.
It was just a comment in terms of the AI. I've just been working on a project with Oxford University looking at developing a website for people who are carers of someone living with dementia to be able to put in a question and get the right answer, or certainly an answer that is useful to them. It is incredibly complicated. I think in some ways, you know, we've messed around with it also on LinkedIn, and you can, you know, it can make you sound incredibly clever and eloquent, but you start to lose authenticity. And I think particularly in our sector, people buy into us and our ideas and what we're trying to do, as opposed to, you know, the grammatical eloquence of an application. I also think that in terms of what we've learned at Oxford is that people can put in a question, for example, it can come up with a nice tone, but actually when they're getting the question, it's not particularly useful, which can just put people off straight away. So I think, you know, it's not where it needs to be yet. And I don't believe that it can ever replace the authenticity that we will share as people that are passionate about what we do. Yeah, that's just my comments.
I would agree. And I think funders want to see human stories and how your work is affecting human people. And I think when you just communicate it in facts and figures and clear language, that can get lost a bit sometimes. So, yeah, thank you, Kellen. Was there any more questions?
Would you mind, Louise, dropping the link for the survey into the chat?
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
Thank you.
If you wouldn't
Sorry,
mind just taking a couple of minutes to fill in the feedback form. Oh, if that's okay. Oh, hang on, sorry. That it's very useful information because as with all, sorry, it's only just sending it to one person. I'll play about with that. But it's very helpful for us to hold that information that because CAN is also a charity, we also have to secure funding for other funders, and also it helps us to measure our impact in the work that we're doing and how we're supporting local organisations and benefiting them. So if you could take a couple of minutes. Thank you, Bethan. Mine is just, for some reason, it's stuck on somebody's name at the top of the chat and won't come off that. So, and I'm not good at talking and multitasking. Okay, but if there was no more questions, then I think we'll stop for today. But please feel free to get in touch directly if we can help you with anything specific. Okay, thank you very much for your time today, everybody. Nice to see you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Liz. We will make sure to send you that webinar.
Thank you. Bye. I think we're still
Right.
recording, Bethany.
Oh yes, thank you, thank you. I always need a reminder. Yeah, there we go.
Sorry, I don't know what
Um,
happened then. Every time I click on the chat, it just says to Nat Tie. It won't let me
Oh,
just add on to the chat.